This is the Miami Dolphins' instant reaction of Game 6 of the 2022 NFL season. I'm going to apologize in advance for my voice as I'm currently fighting a sinus infection that doesn't seem to go away. But nonetheless, here I am because I want to be able to get to you some thoughts along with some stats and facts of each and every Miami Dolphins game of this 2022 NFL season. The Miami Dolphins would fall 24-16 in a contested and heated battle against the Minnesota Vikings. And once again, a game that was marred by both injuries and offensive struggles that included both turnovers and penalties. Let's go over the stats of this game. The Dolphins would have Skylar Thompson be the starter for this game, and he would go 7 for 13, throwing for 89 yards with an average of 6.8 yards per pass, getting sacked one time for 8 yards, finishing with a QBR of 44.3 and an overall passer rating of 75.5. But as I'm sure you know, Skylar Thompson would go down with a right thumb injury, and that would cause Teddy Bridgewater to come in relief, and he would go for a respectable 23 out of 34, 329 yards, an average of 9.7 yards per pass, throwing 2 touchdowns, unfortunately also throwing 2 interceptions. Teddy would get sacked 5 times for 25 yards, finishing with an overall QBR rating of 38.6 and a passer rating of 93.9. For the rushing attack, the Dolphins would be led by Raheem Mostert, who would go 14 carries for 49 yards on a 3.5 average per carry. Nobody else would really stack the stat sheet when it comes to rushing, although Teddy Bridgewater did have a rush for 10 yards, and also Skylar Thompson would also have a rush for 9 yards. Chase Edmonds would only get 2 carries total for a measly 3 yards. Dolphins would be led receiving by Tyreek Hill, who would haul 12 out of 15 targets for 177 yards with an average of 14.8, the long of which would go for 28 yards. He'd be followed somewhat closely by Jalen Waddle, who would finish hauling 6 out of 10 targets, finishing with 129 yards and an overall average per catch of 21.5 with a long of 49 yards. Mike Gesicki would haul both Miami Dolphins receiving touchdowns in this game. He would go 6 catches off of 7 targets for 69 yards with an average of 11.5 yards per catch, along of which would go for 18 yards. And as we said, 2 touchdown catches. Besides that, there wasn't really much to speak of outside of the likes of Chase Edmonds getting 2 receptions for 28 yards, Alec Ingold 2 for 10, Trent Sherfield would go 1 for 6 yards, and then a couple of other targets, both to River Craycraft and Tanner Connor. When it comes to the turnover battle, however, this is where I think the game was lost. Jalen Waddle, which inexplicably would get thrown a pass that hit him in the chest, although he did have to reach back for it slightly. But the result of that would be that the ball would go in the air and would be intercepted by the Minnesota Vikings. Besides that, he would also fumble on what was one of his longer catches of the game, which would have set up the Dolphins in a feasible position to possibly win or get the go-ahead score in this game. This game was really lost late, as the Dolphins truly had an opportunity to win this game late in the fourth quarter. When it comes for our defense, the Phins would be led by Elandon Roberts, who would total 7 total tackles, 3 of them going for solo, and he would also get 1.5 sacks on the day. Brandon Jones would come in second with 6 total tackles, 3 of them going solo. And then other notable stats in this game is that Raekwon Davis would finish with a sack, and Jalen Phillips would get the other half of that one sack by Landon Roberts. The kicking game did not fare too well for the Phins in this game. Jason Sanders would go 1 for 2, missing a 50-yarder while making a 44-yarder. However, I will say that the miss he made wasn't even close, and I think there's a lot that could be said as to what is actually happening with Jason Sanders, as it's only been 2 years since really he was at an all-pro level. When it comes to punting, however, this game was a punt fest. Thomas Morstead would have 6 total punts, totaling 307 yards, almost as many passing yards as Teddy Bridgewater in this game. He would average 51.2 yards per punt, getting a touchback, getting 2 of those punts inside the 20, and he would have a long of 63 yards. Now, uncharacteristic in these reactions, I'm going to start off with the Minnesota Vikings punting unit. Ryan Wright would get 10 punts for an incredible 441 yards, with not so impressive of an average. However, he would get 6 of those 10 punts inside the 20-yard line of the Miami Dolphins, with his long of the day going for 73 yards. Incredible. The Vikings, in terms of field goals, would go 1 for 1. Greg Joseph going 1 for 1. And this is Greg Joseph, the former Dolphin. 1 for 1, of which was a 34-yarder. But he would miss an extra point in the game. Now, when it comes to passing, I think part of the reason why this game was so close late is, in reality, the play of, or lack thereof, of Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins would go 20 for 30, throwing for 175 yards with a 5.8 average per pass, throwing 2 touchdowns, getting sacked 3 times for 19 yards, finishing with a QBR of 48.9 and an overall passer rating of 104.2. Now, the Minnesota Vikings rushing attack was for the most part silent in this game. I think offensively, both teams were pretty stagnated, especially in the first half. However, in what really ended up being the proverbial nail in the coffin in this game, Dalvin Cook would get a 53-yard touchdown run, and that one run accounted for 53 yards out of 77 total yards on the day. Dalvin Cook was pretty much a no-show in this game, and it wasn't until that rush that he was able to finish 13 carries for 77 yards and a respectable 5.9 yards per carry. Besides that, we'd see C.J. Ham and Alexander Madison both taking 1 carry for 3 yards. The Vikings receiving core was also, for the most part, silent in this game, except for a few plays. Justin Jefferson would finish for 6 receptions. He would haul 6 receptions out of 8 targets, getting a total of 107 yards, finishing the day with a 17.8 average per catch. However, out of those 107 yards, 47 of them would come from a long pass that pretty much set up one of the go-ahead scores of the Minnesota Vikings in this game. Adam Thielen would finish the game 4 receptions off of 8 targets, getting a total of 36 yards and a touchdown pass. He'd finish the game with a 9-yard catch average, and a long of which would be for 14 yards. Adam Thielen would actually also get nicked up, and it seemed to be something of a lower body injury, such as a knee or so on. Besides that, there wasn't much more to say about the Minnesota Vikings receiving core. Bottom line in this game, and I don't want to get too much into details, but this game was really a slugfest for the first quarter and a half, and I would say even the entirety of the first half. There wasn't much to be said The Dolphins had a chance at a field goal, which would have brought the score 6-3, would miss, and then on the ensuing drive of the Vikings, they'd go down and they would score a touchdown to end the half, leading 10-3. There was no score in the third quarter, and then came the fourth, in which the Vikings would score 14 points and the Phins would score 3. Overall, ending this game 24-16. The Dolphins now face the Pittsburgh Steelers at home on Sunday Night Football in a game that's really going to set the tone for the rest of this season. And I really consider this a must-win. This has been a quick and brief Miami Dolphins instant reaction of the 2022 NFL season against the Minnesota Vikings. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed and have been enjoying these instant reaction podcasts, along with subscribing to our YouTube and Twitter pages at The Groove and Grit Show, or on Twitter, The Double G Show, for more content like this, along with instant analysis and overall stories. I think one of the things that we're going to start doing is talk about stories within the game that go outside of the realm of just sports and stats. And that's part of the heart of the name itself, Groove and Grit. In life, we have moments when we have to get into a groove, or we're in a groove, but then we'll also have moments where we need to show grit, or where we've experienced grit. Overall, I'm excited for the future and for what's to come for this. I will continue to be doing these instant reaction podcasts for the entirety of the 2022 NFL season. And upcoming, I'm going to speak a little bit about the Florida Panthers and how so far their opening week has been. By the time we do that next podcast, it'll probably now be 2 weeks into the Florida Panther season. So we got a lot to talk about. I'm excited to get to do that. But for now, so long, and see you later for the next instant reaction of the Miami Dolphins in the 2022 NFL season.